"Get out! Get out of this house, you thief!" Amanda's voice was like ice even over the pounding rain. Tasha, in her stained blue maid's uniform, tried to shield her 3 identical little girls as Amanda threw their container of leftovers into the mud. "You and your brats can eat in the dirt," Tasha sobbed, gathering her terrified daughters and running to huddle under a large oak tree on the lawn, the cold rain soaking them to the bone. She tried desperately to wipe the mud off the food, her heart breaking. She looked up, tears blurring her vision, only to see a dark, luxury sedan parked at the end of the driveway. A man was standing beside it, watching her. But before we see, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel, and let's get into the full story. I told you 3 times this week, the staff refrigerator is for storing food, not taking it, Amanda Bennett said. Her voice, sharp as lightning, flashed outside the kitchen window. "And yet here you are, stealing from us again." Tasha Wilson stood frozen, the container of leftover pasta still in her hands. Rain pounded against the mansion's windows, matching the heavy beating of her heart. "Mrs. Bennett, I wasn't stealing. My daughters haven't eaten since—" "Your personal problems aren't my concern," Amanda cut her off, stepping closer in her designer dress that probably cost more than Tasha made in 3 months. "You're fired. I want you and those children out of my house in 1 hour." The October storm that had been building all day over Pinecrest Estates, Connecticut, was nothing compared to the disaster unfolding inside the Bennett Mansion kitchen. Earlier that morning, Tasha had woken at 5:30 to prepare breakfast for her 3 4-year-old daughters before beginning her workday. The small staff quarters behind the kitchen had just enough room for 4 beds and a tiny bathroom. As identical triplets, Lily, Rose, and Violet shared the same curly brown hair and striking blue eyes, though their personalities couldn't be more different. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Rose said, the most outspoken of the 3 as she sat at their small table. "Me too," Violet added quietly, her observant eyes watching Tasha check the nearly empty staff refrigerator. Lily just clutched her worn, stuffed rabbit, saying nothing but looking worried. "We'll have oatmeal today," Tasha said with forced cheerfulness, stretching the last of their food. She'd been waiting for payday, still 2 days away, to restock their supplies. After feeding the girls and getting them settled with coloring books, Tasha reported to the main house. Amanda was already awake, dressed in yoga clothes she'd never sweated in. "The bathrooms need deep cleaning today, all 7 of them," Amanda said without looking up from her phone. "The guest list for the charity gala next week doubled, and David called. He's coming back from Tokyo early." Tasha nodded, keeping her face neutral. "Yes, Mrs. Bennett. When will Mr. Bennett return?" "Tomorrow night, not that it matters to you. Oh, and I'll be at the Hartford Women's Association event until late tonight." Tasha spent the day scrubbing bathrooms, dusting priceless art pieces, and polishing silver, all while checking on her daughters during brief breaks. By evening, the storm had intensified. Wind howled around the mansion, and the power in the staff quarters flickered ominously. When she checked the staff refrigerator again at 7 o'clock, it was completely empty. Tasha called her sister Jenny with shaking hands. "Jenny, I hate to ask, but could you send $50 until payday? The girls are hungry, and we have nothing left." "I wish I could," Jenny's voice crackled through the phone. "But Mark got laid off last week. We're barely making rent." After hanging up, Tasha peered through the window toward the main house. The lights were off, and Amanda's luxury car was gone. Mr. Bennett was still overseas. No one would know if she took just a little of the leftover pasta from last night's dinner. "Stay here and color quietly," Tasha told her daughters. "I'll be right back with dinner." "Promise," Lily whispered, clutching her rabbit tighter. "Promise, baby." The main kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. Tasha quickly found the pasta container in the refrigerator. There was enough to feed her girls with plenty left over. She was carefully dividing the food when headlights swept across the driveway. Amanda had returned early. What are you doing in my kitchen?" Amanda demanded, dropping her designer handbag on the counter. Before Tasha could explain, the triplets appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "Mommy?" Rose called out, her sisters huddled behind her. Amanda's eyes narrowed at the food container. "You're stealing food? After everything we provide? Mrs. Bennett, please. The staff fridge is empty and the girls haven't eaten dinner. So you steal from us?" Amanda grabbed the container from Tasha's hands. "You live here rent-free. We pay you well, but apparently that's not enough. Mrs. Bennett, Get out. All of you. Now." "But the storm? Should have thought about that before you decided to steal." Amanda walked to the door and flung it open. Rain poured in, soaking the marble floor. She threw the food container outside, pasta scattering across the wet driveway. "You have 1 hour to pack your things." The triplets began crying, clinging to Tasha's legs. Amanda didn't even look at them as she marched upstairs, leaving Tasha standing in shocked silence. 20 minutes later, Tasha hurried through the rain with her daughters and 2 hastily packed bags. She had nowhere to go, no car, and barely $100 to her name. The rain soaked through their coats as they huddled under the massive oak tree at the edge of the property. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Violet asked, teeth chattering. "I don't know, sweetheart," Tasha admitted, trying to shield them from the rain with her body. "But we'll be okay." "I'm scared," Lily whispered, her blue eyes wide with fear. "I'm not," Rose declared, though her lower lip trembled. "We don't need their stupid house." Tasha pulled her phone from her pocket, wondering who she could possibly call, when headlights cut through the darkness. A black luxury sedan pulled up to the main house, then slowed as it approached the driveway. Inside the car, David Bennett frowned at the sight of 4 figures huddled beneath the oak tree. He'd returned a day early to surprise Amanda, only to find his housekeeper and her children standing in the pouring rain. He rolled down his window. "Tasha? What's happening?" "Mr. Bennett, Her voice broke. David stepped out of his car, immediately getting drenched. As he approached, lightning flashed, illuminating the faces of the 3 little girls. He froze. The triplets stared back at him with eyes the exact same shade of blue as his own. Their noses resembled his mother's distinctive shape, and when the smallest one sniffled, he saw it. The dimple in her left cheek, identical to his. "Mr. Bennett?" Tasha asked, noticing his shocked expression. David couldn't speak. His mind raced back 5 years, to the brief relationship he'd had with his temporary assistant before he'd met Amanda. The timing aligned perfectly with the age of these children. Another flash of lightning, and David noticed more details. The curve of their chins, the shape of their ears, all mirrors of his own family traits. "How old are they?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the rain. 4, Tasha replied, pulling them closer. "Exactly 4? When is their birthday?" Tasha swallowed hard. "November 15th. 9 months after their brief relationship had ended. David felt lightheaded as the realization crashed over him. "Why are you out here in this storm?" he managed to ask. "Mrs. Bennett fired me tonight. She said we need to leave immediately." David looked toward the mansion, then back at the triplets, his daughters. It couldn't be a coincidence. The blue eyes, the dimples, the timing. "Get in the car," he said firmly. "Mr. Bennett, I don't want to cause trouble." "Please, Tasha. Get the girls in the car. You're soaked, and they're freezing." His tone softened as he looked at the triplets again. No one should be out in this weather. As Tasha hesitated, Rose stepped forward, staring up at David with a boldness that reminded him of his mother. "Your house is too big anyway," she declared, water dripping from her curls. Despite everything, David felt his lips twitch into a smile. "Yes, it is. Far too big." He knelt to her level. "What's your name?" "Rose Wilson. These are my sisters, Lily and Violet. We're identical triplets." "I can see that, David said, studying their faces with new awareness. "Let's get you all somewhere warm and dry." As he helped them into his car, David knew that nothing in his carefully controlled life would ever be the same again. David drove slowly through the rain toward the Bennett mansion, his mind racing with questions. The 3 little girls in his back seat had stopped crying, now staring at him with curious eyes. His eyes. "Your house is really big," Rose said, pressing her face against the car window as they approached the circular driveway. "Yes, it is," David replied, still trying to process the situation. He parked under the covered entrance and turned to Tasha. "Let's get everyone inside and dried off." As they stepped into the grand foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier, Amanda appeared at the top of the curved staircase. Her face hardened when she saw them. "What are they doing back here?" she demanded, descending the stairs. "I fired her." David kept his voice calm but firm. "It's pouring rain, Amanda. They have nowhere to go. That's not our problem." Amanda reached the bottom of the stairs, her arms crossed over her designer dress. "I caught her stealing food from our kitchen." "Taking leftover pasta for hungry children is hardly stealing," David said, noticing how the triplets huddled behind Tasha's legs, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Amanda stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're undermining my authority with the staff. I made a decision." "And I'm making one now," David replied. He turned to Tasha and the girls. "Please follow me to my office." "David!" Amanda grabbed his arm. "We need to discuss this privately." He gently removed her hand. "Later." Amanda's face flushed with anger as David led Tasha and the triplets down the hallway to his wood-paneled office. Once inside, he closed the door and locked it, muffling Amanda's protests from the hallway. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to the leather sofa against the wall. The girls climbed up together, still damp from the rain and visibly tired. David pressed a button on his desk phone. "Mrs. Reynolds? Could you bring hot chocolate and some cookies to my office? For 3 children." He paused. "And maybe some dry towels." "Right away, Mr. Bennett," the housekeeper replied. An uncomfortable silence filled the room as David studied the triplets more carefully. Now, in the warm light of his office, the resemblance was undeniable. They had his blue eyes, his mother's nose, and when Rose smiled hesitantly at him, he saw his own dimple. "They're beautiful," he said quietly to Tasha. "Thank you," she replied, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. A soft knock interrupted them, and Mrs. Reynolds entered with a tray of hot chocolate and a plate of cookies. She set it on the coffee table in front of the girls. "Here are some towels as well," she said, placing a stack of fluffy white towels beside Tasha. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Bennett?" "That's all for now, thank you." After the housekeeper left, David helped Tasha dry the girls' hair and get them settled with their hot chocolate. Once they were happily sipping from oversized mugs, he guided Tasha to the far corner of the office. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "The timing of our relationship and their birth." Tasha took a deep breath. "They're 4 years old. They'll turn 5 next month on November 15th. David did the math in his head. 9 months after we were together." She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice wasn't angry, just bewildered. "I tried." Tasha finally looked up at him. "When I found out I was having triplets, I was scared. I called your office dozens of times, but your assistant always blocked me. I sent letters, emails. I even came to your building once when I was 5 months pregnant." David remembered his overzealous security team and the strict screening protocols his assistant followed. "What happened?" "Your security guards escorted me out. Said you were unavailable and not accepting unsolicited meetings." She glanced at the girls, who were now examining the fancy cookies on their plate. "Then I read about your engagement to Amanda in the news." "So you just gave up?" "What choice did I have?" Tasha asked. "You were a billionaire about to marry a socialite. I was nobody. a temporary assistant you'd been with for a few weeks. Would you have even believed they were yours? David ran a hand through his hair, still damp from the rain. But then you applied for a job here? As our housekeeper? Tasha's eyes filled with tears. Violet got sick last year. Respiratory problems. The medical bills wiped out my savings. I needed a job with housing included, and your estate was hiring. I never intended for you to find out. For me, never to know I have 3 daughters? David's voice rose slightly before he controlled himself. I was scared, she admitted. I still am. Outside the office door, they could hear Amanda's voice rising as she argued with someone. This is outrageous. They're not staying here. David walked to his desk and pulled out a photograph from the drawer. He brought it to Tasha. This is me when I was 4, he said, showing her the picture of a small boy with the same blue eyes and dimpled smile as the triplets. Tasha touched the photo with trembling fingers. I knew they looked like you, from the moment they were born. A loud bang on the door made them both jump. David, open this door immediately, Amanda shouted. He sighed and turned to Tasha. Stay here with the girls. I'll handle Amanda. When David stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him, Amanda was waiting with fire in her eyes. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. Bringing that woman back into our house? She's the mother of my children, Amanda. Amanda froze. What did you just say? The triplets. They're mine. That's ridiculous. She's manipulating you. Amanda laughed, but it sounded hollow. You can't possibly believe… Look at them, David interrupted. Really look. They have my eyes, my mother's nose, my dimple. The timing fits perfectly. Amanda's face transformed into something cold and calculating. So your little fling with the help produced some brats. That doesn't mean they belong in our home. Don't call them that. David's voice hardened. And this isn't just your home. It's mine too. If you think I'm going to play stepmother to your illegitimate children, you're delusional. Amanda stepped closer, lowering her voice to a threatening whisper. If this gets out, what do you think will happen to your precious company's stock price? To your reputation? I won't let you humiliate me like this. David stared at his wife of 4 years, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. Is that a threat? It's reality. Get rid of the help and her spawn, or I'll make sure everyone knows how David Bennett abandoned his secret family until it became convenient to acknowledge them. Before David could respond, Violet's small voice came from the now open office doorway. Mommy, I don't feel good. They turned to see the smallest triplet standing there, her face pale. As they watched, she began coughing harshly, struggling to catch her breath. Tasha rushed to her daughter, lifting her up. Her inhaler is in our bag, she said urgently to David. He quickly retrieved the bag from where they'd left it in the foyer and brought it to Tasha, who administered the medicine to Violet. The little girl's breathing gradually eased. She has asthma, Tasha explained quietly. The cold rain made it worse. David looked at his daughter's pale face and made a decision. You're all staying tonight. I'll arrange something better tomorrow. They are not, Amanda began. Enough. David cut her off. It's late, and a child is sick. This isn't up for discussion. Hours later, after the triplets had fallen asleep on the office sofa, David made phone calls while Tasha sat nearby, anxiously watching Violet's breathing. It's arranged, David said finally, ending his last call. There's a suite at the Greenfield Hotel downtown. You and the girls can stay there while we figure things out. I can't afford a hotel, Tasha protested. I'm paying, David said firmly. They're my daughters too, Tasha. I missed 4 years of their lives. I won't miss any more. The early morning light was just beginning to break through the storm clouds as David helped load their bags into his car. Amanda watched coldly from an upstairs window as he carefully carried each sleeping triplet to the vehicle. When all 3 girls were safely buckled in, David turned to Tasha. I'll have my lawyer contact you today. We have a lot to discuss. Tasha nodded, exhaustion evident in her face. "What happens now?" "I don't know," David admitted, "but they're my daughters. That changes everything." 1 week had passed since that stormy night. The Greenfield Hotel suite in Greenwich, Connecticut was spacious, with 2 bedrooms, a living area, and a kitchenette. Tasha watched her daughters explore every corner of their temporary home. "Look, Mommy! The TV is so big!" Rose jumped on the cream-colored sofa, pointing at the flat screen on the wall. "Rose, please don't jump on the furniture," Tasha said, though she couldn't help but smile at her daughter's excitement. Violet sat quietly by the large window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Lily hugged her stuffed rabbit and followed Tasha everywhere, reluctant to let her mother out of sight. The doorbell rang, sending Lily scurrying behind Tasha's legs. "It's okay, sweetie. It's probably Mr. Bennett." Tasha smoothed her daughter's curly hair and opened the door. David stood in the hallway, holding 3 identical teddy bears with blue ribbons around their necks. "Good morning," he said, his eyes immediately finding the triplets. "I brought something for the girls." Rose ran forward. "Are those for us?" "Yes, one for each of you." David handed a bear to Rose, who accepted it with a big smile. He knelt down, offering the second bear to Violet, who approached cautiously from her window seat. Lily stayed behind Tasha, peering around her legs. "This one has a special ribbon for Lily," David said gently, holding out the third bear. "It's the same color as her rabbit." Lily took a small step forward, but didn't reach for the toy. "It's okay, Lily," Tasha encouraged. "You can take it." The little girl finally accepted the bear but immediately retreated to safety behind her mother. David stood trying to hide his disappointment. "How are you all settling in?" "The hotel is very nice," Tasha said. "Thank you again for arranging it." An awkward silence filled the room until Rose broke it. "Are you our real daddy?" she asked, looking up at David with unblinking blue eyes. David glanced at Tasha, who nodded slightly. "Yes, Rose, I am," he said, kneeling to her level. "I'm your father." Rose studied his face seriously. "How come you didn't live with us before?" David struggled for words. "I didn't know about you, but now I do, and I want to be part of your lives if that's okay." Rose considered this. "Do you know how to play Princess Castle?" "No, but I'd like to learn." "Good." Rose nodded, apparently satisfied. "You can be the dragon." Later that afternoon, after David had left and the girls were napping, Tasha applied for jobs online. One rejection email after another filled her inbox. Most employers wanted references from her previous job, the very job she'd been fired from. The phone rang and Tasha answered quickly before it could wake the girls. "Miss Wilson? This is James Parker from Bennett Legal Associates. Mr. Bennett asked me to discuss some matters with you regarding the children." "I see," Tasha said, her stomach tightening. "We'll need to arrange paternity testing, though Mr. Bennett doesn't doubt the children are his. It's simply a legal formality. Also, I must caution you against speaking to any press. There's significant interest in Mr. Bennett's personal life." After the call ended, Tasha sat on the edge of her bed, anxiety washing over her. Everything was moving so fast. Just last week she'd been a housekeeper with a secret. Now she was unemployed, living in a luxury hotel, and lawyers were calling about paternity tests. The next morning, a sharp knock woke Tasha just after 7. She opened the door to find an elegant older woman with steel-gray hair and familiar blue eyes. "I'm Eleanor Bennett," the woman said without introduction. "David's mother. May I come in?" Tasha stepped aside, conscious of her simple pajamas and the messy hotel suite. "The girls are still sleeping." Eleanor entered, her gaze sweeping over the scattered toys and breakfast dishes. "David called me yesterday. Told me I have 3 granddaughters I never knew about." "Mrs. Bennett, You'll find I prefer direct communication, Ms. Wilson," Eleanor interrupted. "I'm here to see the children and understand this situation for myself." As if on cue, Violet appeared in the bedroom doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily. She froze when she saw the stranger. "Hello?" Eleanor said, her voice softening slightly. "You must be one of my granddaughters." Violet didn't respond, but she didn't retreat either. "That's Violet," Tasha said. "She's the youngest of the triplets." "By how many minutes?" Eleanor asked. 7 minutes after Rose. Lily was born first." Eleanor nodded. "Triplets run in the Bennett family. My great-aunt had identical twin sisters." Violet slowly approached, carrying a picture book. To Tasha's surprise, she held it out to Eleanor. "Would you like me to read this?" Eleanor asked, sounding less formidable. Violet nodded and climbed onto the couch beside her grandmother. Eleanor opened the book, and Violet settled against her side as if they'd known each other forever. By the time David arrived at noon, all 3 girls were awake. Lily still kept her distance from the newcomers, but Rose was showing Eleanor her collection of toy cars. "Mother," David said, surprise evident in his voice, "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "Clearly," Eleanor replied, "I decided not to wait. These children are Bennett's. I needed to see them for myself." "And?" David asked. "Violet has your father's chin, Rose has your temperament." Eleanor's expression softened. "They're beautiful children." Later that afternoon, David received a call that sent him rushing back to his mansion. "Amanda changed the locks," he told Tasha when he returned to the hotel, frustration evident in his face. "And she's frozen my personal accounts." "Can she do that?" Tasha asked. "Legally? Number, but the bank will take time to sort it out." David ran a hand through his hair. "I need to meet with my friend Robert at the office. He's our chief operating officer and the one person I trust completely right now." At Bennett Technologies headquarters, Robert Chen was waiting in David's office. The two had been friends since high school, long before David's company became a tech giant. "I heard about the situation," Robert said, offering David a cup of coffee. "How are you holding up?" "I have 3 daughters I never knew existed, a wife threatening to destroy me, and now I'm locked out of my own house." David accepted the coffee gratefully. "I've been better." Robert leaned forward. "The woman who had the triplets, isn't she the same Tasha who worked in customer relations about 5 years ago?" David looked up in surprise. "You remember her?" "Of course. She was smart, worked hard. I was surprised when she left so suddenly." Robert paused. "Amanda always seemed perfect on paper, but I never understood what you saw in her beyond that." "She made sense at the time," David said quietly. "No emotional complications, no surprises." He laughed without humor. "So much for that plan." 3 days later, David accompanied Tasha and the triplets to Little Acorns preschool for orientation day. The girls had been attending for several months, but this was David's first visit. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, welcome." The teacher greeted them at the classroom door. "Actually, I'm David Bennett," he corrected her. "I'm the girl's father." The teacher's eyes widened with recognition of the famous tech billionaire. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize—" Parents throughout the classroom turned to stare. Some whispered behind their hands. Tasha felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. "Daddy, come see my cubby." Rose grabbed David's hand, oblivious to the attention. She'd adapted to calling him Daddy faster than her sisters. As David let Rose lead him around the classroom, Tasha hung back with Lily and Violet. Lily clung to Tasha's hand while Violet watched the other children at the building block station. "You can go play, Violet," Tasha encouraged. Violet hesitated, then walked over to the blocks. A little boy was building a tall tower. "Can I help?" Violet asked quietly. "No, girls can't build towers," the boy replied. Before Tasha could intervene, Rose appeared. "My sister can build whatever she wants," Rose declared, hands on her hips just like Eleanor did. "And our daddy owns a big company with lots of towers." The little boy looked at David, who was watching the exchange carefully. "Fine," the boy muttered, moving over to make room for Violet. On the drive back to the hotel, David was unusually quiet. "Is everything okay?" Tasha asked after the girls had fallen asleep in their car seats. "I saw myself in Rose today," David said. "The way she stood up for Violet. My mother used to say I was the same way, too stubborn for my own good." He glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughters. "I've missed so much already." "You're here now," Tasha said quietly. "Yes, I am." David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "And I'm not going anywhere." "I'm not going anywhere," David had promised. Yet 1 month later, those words were being tested as their lives grew more complicated each day. David walked into the Greenfield Hotel lobby on a cold morning, newspaper tucked under his arm. His face tightened when he saw the front desk clerk quickly hide a copy of the Greenwich Sentinel. He knew exactly what was inside. Everyone did. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," the clerk said nervously. David nodded and continued toward the elevator. In the month since discovering his daughters, he'd established a routine. Breakfast with the triplets 3 days a week, video calls on busy days, and weekend outings to the park. When he entered the hotel suite, he found Tasha arguing with a woman who looked similar to her but with shorter hair and a more skeptical expression. "Jenny, please," Tasha was saying, "not in front of the girls." "I'm just asking what his long-term plans are," Jenny replied. She turned as David entered. "Speaking of the billionaire father." "You must be Tasha's sister," David said, extending his hand. "I'm David Bennett." Jenny crossed her arms instead of taking his hand. "I know who you are." "Everyone does, especially after that article." David winced. Yesterday's newspaper had featured an exclusive interview with Amanda. The headline read, "Betrayed and abandoned, Amanda Bennett speaks out on husband's secret family." "Don't believe everything you read," he said. "I believe what I see," Jenny replied. "And I see my sister and nieces living in a hotel while you figure out if you want to be a father or not." "Jenny!" Tasha exclaimed. "It's okay," David said. "Your sister is right to be concerned." He set down the newspaper, careful to hide the headline from the girls, who were coloring at the small table across the room. Violet looked up, her eyes brightening when she saw David. "Good morning," she said, her new stutter making the greeting sound like, Good morning." "Good morning, Violet," David replied, his heart aching at this new sign of stress. Rose ran over and hugged his legs. "Did you bring us anything?" "Rose," Tasha scolded. "That's not polite." David smiled. "Just myself today, but I thought we might visit the Children's Museum this weekend." Lily remained at the table, focused on her coloring. David had noticed she'd become even more withdrawn lately. Last night, Tasha had texted him that Lily had woken up screaming from a nightmare. "I have some good news," Tasha announced, trying to lighten the mood. "I got the receptionist job at Lakeside Medical Group." "That's wonderful," David said. "When do you start?" "Monday, 9 to 5, weekdays." David frowned slightly. "What about the girls? Will Jenny stay to help?" "I can only stay another week," Jenny said. "I have my own job back in Portland." "I'll find a babysitter for after preschool," Tasha said. "We'll manage." "Or I could hire a professional nanny service," David suggested. "They have highly qualified people who—" "No," Tasha interrupted firmly. "I don't need you to solve every problem with money." David blinked, surprised by her sharp tone. "I'm just trying to help." "I know, but—" Tasha glanced at her daughters. "Could we discuss this later?" That evening, after Jenny took the girls swimming in the hotel pool, David and Tasha sat in the suite's small kitchenette. "I appreciate your offer," Tasha began, "but I need to maintain some independence. The girls need stability, not luxury." "What's wrong with giving them both?" David countered. "You'll be working full-time. A good nanny would help tremendously." "A stranger you pay to care about them isn't the same as family," Tasha said. "We've always managed on our own." "But you don't have to anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you." Their discussion was interrupted when Jenny returned with the triplets, all wrapped in fluffy hotel towels. "Someone's very tired," Jenny said, nodding toward Lily, who was rubbing her eyes. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and Jenny had gone to her own room, David's phone rang. It was Robert Chen. "You need to come to the office tomorrow," Robert said without greeting. "The board called an emergency meeting." David sighed. "Let me guess. They saw Amanda's interview. Among other things, Peterson and Lancaster are threatening to pull their investment. They say the scandal damages the family values image of Bennett Technologies." The next morning, David sat at the head of the boardroom table facing 8 concerned board members. Robert stood beside him in silent support. "This personal matter doesn't affect the company's performance," David argued. "3 illegitimate children absolutely affect our public image," said Lancaster, an older investor with traditional views. "Our latest app is marketed to families." "My children are not illegitimate," David said coldly. "They're mine, and I acknowledge them fully." "Perhaps if you had done so 5 years ago, we wouldn't be in this position," added Peterson. "That's enough." Eleanor Bennett's voice cut through the tension as she entered the room. Though retired from active business, she still held significant company shares. "Eleanor," Lancaster nodded respectfully. "Surely you understand our concerns. I understand that my son has discovered he has 3 beautiful daughters, and instead of supporting him, you're worried about stock prices." Eleanor took a seat at the table. "David will establish the appropriate legal recognition for his children, set up proper trusts, and handle his divorce discreetly. Won't you, David?" David looked at his mother gratefully. "Yes, I will." After the meeting, Eleanor pulled David aside. "I meant what I said. You need to legally establish paternity and create trust funds. Show commitment, not just words." "I know, Mother. I'm working on it." "Work faster," she advised. "Amanda isn't waiting around." The Eleanor's words proved prophetic. That afternoon, as David ate lunch at his favorite downtown restaurant, a man in a suit approached his table. "Mr. Bennett? I'm Michael Winters representing Amanda Bennett." He placed a thick envelope on the table. "You've been served with divorce papers." Conversations around them stopped as people turned to stare. David took the envelope without comment, but his hands shook slightly. Back at his office, David read through the documents with growing anger. Amanda was demanding half his fortune, claiming the prenuptial agreement was invalid due to fraud and misrepresentation. That evening, David arrived at the hotel suite to find Tasha sitting on the couch with Lily, who was sobbing quietly. "What happened?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. "A girl at school said Lily was the maid's mistake," Tasha explained quietly. "She heard her mother talking about us." David felt something break inside him. He sat down beside Lily and gently touched her shoulder. "Lily, may I talk to you and your sisters for a minute?" Tasha called Rose and Violet from the bedroom. When all 3 girls were seated, David took a deep breath. "Girls, your mom and I need to explain something. It might be confusing, but we'll try to make it simple." Tasha nodded, moving to sit beside him. The first time they'd presented a united front to the children. "A long time ago, before I married Mrs. Bennett, your mom and I knew each other," David began. "We liked each other very much. Then you were born," Tasha continued. "But your dad and I weren't together anymore. I tried to tell him about you, but I couldn't reach him." "I didn't know I had 3 wonderful daughters," David said. "If I had known, I would have been part of your lives from the beginning. But now I know," he continued, looking at each girl. "And nothing anyone says can change the fact that you are my daughters and I love you very much." "And I love you too," Tasha added. "So much that sometimes I wanted to keep you all to myself." "Are you going to be together now?" Rose asked directly. David and Tasha exchanged glances. "We don't know yet," Tasha answered honestly. "But we both love you and will both take care of you." "That won't change." Lily wiped her tears and looked up at David. "That girl said I'm not supposed to be here." David felt his heart twist. He took Lily's small hand in his. "You are exactly where you're supposed to be. All three of you belong right here with us." For the first time since he'd known her, Lily gave him a tiny smile. Lily's tiny smile was the first breakthrough. In the 3 months that followed, there were more small victories as David became a regular part of the triplets' lives. Rose now called him Daddy without hesitation. Violet's stutter improved with the speech therapist David had found. Even Lily had begun to trust him, sometimes holding his hand during their weekend outings. It was a cold January morning when Mark Williams, head of David's security team, requested an urgent meeting. "You asked us to investigate some financial discrepancies," Mark said, placing a thick folder on David's desk at Bennett Technologies. "What we found was concerning." David opened the folder and froze. The first page showed bank transfers from company accounts to offshore holdings linked to Amanda. "She's been embezzling money?" David asked. "For at least 3 years," Mark confirmed. "But there's more." Mark turned to several statements from former household staff describing Amanda's abuse. "She fired the gardener because his hedge trimming was too loud while she was on the phone," David read aloud. "She reduced the cook to tears daily. She threw a vase at the pool cleaner." Many staff were too afraid to speak up until now, Mark explained. "There's one more thing you should see." He handed David a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter addressed to David Bennett, dated 5 years ago. The return address was Tasha Wilson's. "Where did you find this?" David asked, his voice tight. "In a locked drawer in Mrs. Bennett's personal desk." There were others too. David stared at the unopened letter, Tasha's attempt to tell him about her pregnancy, the letter he never received. "I need to confront Amanda about this," David said. "Today." That afternoon, David drove to the mansion he once shared with Amanda. She answered the door herself, having fired most of the staff since their separation. "Well, look who's here," she said coolly. "The family man." "We need to talk," David replied, following her into the lavish living room. Amanda wore an expensive silk blouse and perfectly tailored pants. Her blonde hair was styled impeccably, but her eyes were hard. "Let me guess," she said, pouring herself a drink. "You want to discuss divorce terms? My lawyer says I deserve half of everything." "I want to discuss this." David placed the folder on the glass coffee table. "Financial fraud, abuse of staff, and these." He dropped Tasha's unopened letters beside the folder. Amanda's perfectly composed face flickered briefly before she regained control. "You had your little attack dog investigators spy on me? You've been stealing from my company for years." "Our company," she corrected. "And I deserve that money for putting up with your obsession with work while neglecting me." "And the letters?" David demanded. "You kept Tasha's attempts to contact me about my children from me." "Why?" Amanda laughed, a brittle sound. "Why do you think? I wasn't about to let some temporary assistant ruin everything I'd worked for." "You knew? All this time?" "Of course I knew." Amanda sipped her drink. "I always keep tabs on the women in your life. When I heard rumors about your little fling getting pregnant, I made sure her messages never reached you." David felt sick. "And then you hired her as our housekeeper? Why would you do that?" "Keep your enemies close," Amanda shrugged. "I wanted to see what she might try. And it was so satisfying watching her clean our toilets while I wore the rings that should have been hers. You deliberately made her life miserable," David realized. "She deserved it. She thought she could trap you with those brats." Amanda's beautiful face twisted with hatred. "I was protecting what was mine." "They're children, Amanda. Innocent children." "They're nothing to me," she spat. "And if you think I'll let them take what's rightfully mine, you're wrong. I'll destroy you in court. I'll turn those precious little girls against you." "Are you threatening my daughters?" David asked quietly. "I'm promising you," Amanda said, stepping closer. "If you don't give me what I want in this divorce, I'll make sure Tasha and those 3 mistakes wish they'd never heard the name Bennett." Unknown to both of them, a small figure had slipped into the mansion through the unlocked kitchen door. Lily Bennett had come to the office with Tasha that morning as Little Acorns Preschool was closed for teacher training. When Jenny took Rose and Violet to the bathroom, Lily had wandered away, curious about the big building where her father worked. She had seen David leave and followed him outside, climbing into the back seat of his car without him noticing. When they arrived at the big house, she remembered from the stormy night Lily had stayed hidden, frightened by the angry voices. Now, hearing the mean lady threaten her family, Lily crouched lower behind the living room sofa, clutching her stuffed rabbit tightly. "This conversation is over," David said coldly. "My lawyer will contact yours. And Amanda? Stay away from my children." He strode out, unaware of his stowaway daughter still hiding in the house. Lily waited until she heard Amanda's footsteps fade before she crept to the kitchen door and back to David's car, squeezing into the small space behind the driver's seat. David drove away from the mansion, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He called Tasha. "I just confronted Amanda," he said when she answered. "It was worse than we thought. She knew about the girls all along. She deliberately kept your letters from me." "What?" Tasha's voice was shocked. "But why would she hire me then?" "To torment you. Her words, not mine." David sighed. "I'm heading to Franklin Park now to meet you and the girls. We need to talk about increasing security. Amanda made some threats I'm taking very seriously." "Oh no." Tasha sounded worried. "David, there's something else." "Lily is missing." Jenny took the girls to the bathroom, and when they came back, Lily was gone. "Security is searching the building now." David's blood ran cold. "When did this happen?" "About an hour ago. I've been trying to call you." David was about to respond when his phone beeped with another call. "That's Jenny. Let me see if they found her." He switched calls. "Jenny? Did you find Lily?" "No." Jenny's voice was panicked. "David, she's not in the building. Security checked the cameras. She followed you outside." David's mind raced. "She must have gotten in my car. Let me check." He pulled into a parking lot and turned to look in the back seat. There, curled up small with her rabbit, was Lily. "I found her," David said with immense relief. "She's in my car." Lily looked up with frightened eyes. "The mean lady wants to hurt us," she whispered. "You heard that?" David asked gently. "Lily, I won't let anyone hurt you or your sisters or your mom. I promise." "I want Mommy," Lily said, tears filling her eyes. "We're going to see her right now at the park," David assured her. He spoke into the phone again. "Jenny, tell Tasha I have Lily and we'll meet them at Franklin Park in 20 minutes. He hung up and pulled back onto the road, frequently checking on Lily in the rearview mirror. "You scared us, sweetheart. Please don't disappear like that again." "I'm sorry," Lily said quietly. "It's okay now. We'll be with Mommy and your sisters soon." They were just 3 blocks from the park when it happened. David stopped at a red light, still talking reassuringly to Lily. When the light turned green, he drove into the intersection. From the right, a delivery truck ran its red light, speeding directly toward them. David had less than a second to react. He saw the truck, saw where it would hit, right where Lily was sitting. In that instant, he made the only choice a father could make. He unbuckled, twisted in his seat, and threw himself toward the back seat, covering Lily's small body with his own. The impact was deafening. Metal crushed metal. Glass shattered. The car spun violently before coming to rest against a light pole. In the terrible silence that followed, Lily remained perfectly still beneath David's protective embrace, his body having absorbed the brunt of the impact. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. His arm lay at an unnatural angle. "Daddy?" Lily whispered, but David didn't respond. Sirens wailed in the distance. People rushed toward the wrecked car, calling for help. Someone carefully opened the crumpled rear door. "There's a child in here!" a woman shouted. "And a man! He's badly hurt!" Paramedics arrived minutes later. They worked carefully to extract Lily, who was physically unharmed but wouldn't speak or let go of her rabbit. David was in much worse condition, multiple broken bones, internal injuries, a serious head wound. As they loaded him into the ambulance, a paramedic found his phone and saw the last call. "Should we call Tasha?" he asked his partner. Across town, Tasha was already frantic. David and Lily should have arrived 20 minutes ago. When her phone rang with news of the accident, she collapsed onto a park bench, Rose and Violet clutching her legs in confusion. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Rose asked. "Your daddy and Lily have been in an accident," Tasha managed to say. "We need to go to the hospital right away." By evening, the story had reached every major news outlet. Tech billionaire David Bennett critically injured protecting secret daughter. Pictures of the mangled car appeared online. Reporters gathered outside Greenwich Memorial Hospital, where David lay unconscious in intensive care. Inside, Tasha sat beside his bed, holding his hand while machines beeped steadily around them. Lily wouldn't leave her father's side, curled in a chair next to the bed, silent and wide-eyed. Rose and Violet stayed with Eleanor in the family waiting room, too young to understand the gravity of the situation. A doctor entered quietly. "Miss Wilson, Mr. Bennett has multiple fractures, a punctured lung, and a severe head injury. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling." "Will he?" Tasha couldn't finish the question. "We're doing everything we can," the doctor said gently. "The next 48 hours will be critical." Tasha looked at David's bruised face, then at Lily's traumatized expression. She reached for her daughter's hand. "Your daddy saved you," she whispered. "He protected you because he loves you very, very much." Lily didn't respond. She simply stared at David's still form, clutching her rabbit with one hand and her father's fingers with the other. The beeping of hospital machines filled the quiet room. For 3 days, Tasha had barely left David's side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to his bed. Lily remained silent, refusing to speak to anyone, even her sisters. She spent hours drawing pictures and taping them to the wall near David's bed. Outside Greenwich Memorial Hospital, a crowd of reporters had gathered. The story of the billionaire tech CEO injured while protecting his recently discovered daughter had become national news. "Miss Wilson?" A nurse poked her head into the room. "There's a situation in the lobby you should know about." Tasha gently squeezed David's unmoving hand. "I'll be right back," she whispered. "I'll stay with Daddy," Lily said softly, her first words since the accident. Tasha kissed Lily's forehead, relieved to hear her daughter's voice. "I won't be long." In the hospital lobby, Tasha found a chaotic scene. Reporters pressed against the glass doors, cameras flashing. Security guards blocked a well-dressed woman from entering the elevator bank. "That's Amanda Bennett," the nurse explained quietly. "She's demanding to see Mr. Bennett and claiming she has medical power of attorney." Amanda spotted Tasha and pointed. "There she is! The woman who destroyed my marriage. Security! Remove her from my husband's hospital immediately." Before Tasha could respond, a stern voice cut through the commotion. "That won't be necessary." Eleanor Bennett strode through the lobby doors, ignoring the reporters who called her name. She wore a perfectly tailored gray suit, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. "Eleanor," Amanda's voice softened artificially. "Thank goodness you're here." This woman has taken control of David's medical decisions. Eleanor didn't even look at Amanda. She walked directly to Tasha. "How is my son?" "No change," Tasha replied. "The doctors say his brain swelling has stabilized, but he's still in a coma." "And my granddaughters?" "Rose and Violet are with my sister at the hotel. Lily won't leave David's room." Amanda stepped forward. "Eleanor, surely you can't support this arrangement. This woman worked as our housekeeper. She's using these children to get David's money." Eleanor finally turned to Amanda, her expression cold. "Is that so? Then perhaps you can explain why my security team found Tasha's unopened letters in your desk? Letters informing David about his children 5 years ago?" Amanda's face paled. "That's a lie." "And perhaps you can explain the offshore accounts where you've been transferring company funds?" Eleanor continued. Or the testimonies from a dozen household staff about your abusive behavior? This is ridiculous, Amanda sputtered. I'm David's wife. You're a thief and a liar, Eleanor said calmly, and you threatened my granddaughters. That alone would be enough for me to ensure you never come near this family again. The lobby had gone silent. Even the reporters outside had stopped shouting questions, straining to hear the confrontation. Security, Eleanor addressed the hospital guards. This woman has no legal right to visit my son. Please escort her from the premises. You can't do this, Amanda shrieked as the guards gently but firmly led her toward the exit. I'll ruin all of you. I know things about Bennett Technologies that would destroy the company. When Amanda was gone, Eleanor turned back to Tasha. I apologize for that unpleasantness. Now, where are Rose and Violet staying? The Greenfield Hotel, Tasha replied, still stunned by Eleanor's intervention. That won't do, Eleanor decided. I'll have my driver bring them and your sister to my home. We have plenty of room, and it's more secure. Mrs. Bennett, that's very kind, but… Eleanor, the older woman corrected. And it's not kindness, it's practicality. Those children are Bennetts. They should be protected as such. That evening, Tasha called Jenny at Eleanor's mansion to check on Rose and Violet. You wouldn't believe this place, Jenny whispered into the phone. It's like a museum, but the girls are having the time of their lives. Eleanor showed them a collection of dolls from around the world that belonged to David when he was a boy. How are they behaving? Tasha asked, worried. Perfectly, Jenny laughed. I've never seen Rose so polite. She keeps calling Eleanor Mrs. Bennett in this formal little voice. After hanging up, Tasha returned to David's room, where Robert Chen had arrived with his laptop. The board is trying to use David's condition to push through some changes he opposed, Robert explained. I've been blocking them, but Amanda's lawyer delivered this today. He handed Tasha a legal document. She's filing for temporary control of Bennett Technologies, claiming David is incapacitated and she's his next of kin. Can she do that? Tasha asked. Not if we stop her, Eleanor said, entering the room with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Tasha. Black? 2 sugars, correct? Tasha accepted the coffee with surprise. Yes, how did you know? I noticed things, Eleanor said simply. She turned to Robert. Call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'll attend as a major shareholder. As they discussed strategy, a hospital orderly appeared with a food cart. Dinner for the patient's family, he announced cheerfully. We didn't order anything, Tasha said. Courtesy of Channel 7 News, the orderly explained. They're offering exclusive rights to your story. $10,000 just to talk about Mr. Bennett and the accident. Eleanor watched as Tasha's expression hardened. Take it away, Tasha said firmly, and tell Channel 7 that my children's trauma isn't for sale. Not for $10,000, not for any amount. After the orderly left, Eleanor studied Tasha with new respect. Most people would have taken that offer. Most people haven't seen what publicity does to children, Tasha replied. These reporters don't care about Lily's nightmares or how confused Rose and Violet are. They just want a story. The next morning, Eleanor arrived at the hospital wearing another impeccable suit, this time with David's mother's pearls around her neck. The board meeting went our way, she informed Tasha. Amanda's attempt to take control was rejected unanimously. Thank you, Tasha said sincerely. Eleanor waved away her thanks. I protected the company my son built, nothing more. But Tasha noticed the way Eleanor's eyes lingered on David's still form, the slight tremble in her usually steady hands. He's strong, Tasha offered quietly. The doctors say his vital signs are improving. Of course they are, Eleanor said briskly. He's a Bennett. Later that day, Rose and Violet came to visit with Jenny. Both girls climbed carefully onto the foot of David's bed. Why won't Daddy wake up? Rose asked, her usual confidence replaced with worry. His brain needs time to heal, Tasha explained gently. Like when I had a fever and had to sleep a lot? Violet asked, her stutter less pronounced now. Yes, just like that, Tasha smiled. Lily, who had been drawing silently, suddenly spoke. He saved me. She looked up at Eleanor. The truck was coming, and he covered me with his body. Eleanor's composed facade cracked slightly. Yes, he did. Your father is very brave. Is he going to die? Lily asked directly. No, Eleanor answered firmly. Bennetts are stubborn. We don't give up easily. That evening, after Rose and Violet had gone back to Eleanor's house with Jenny, Tasha faced a new crisis. The hospital administrator informed her that several news vans had discovered the back entrance where they'd been bringing the children. We can't guarantee their privacy anymore, he explained apologetically. Eleanor overheard the conversation. This is unacceptable. These children deserve protection. I agree, Mrs. Bennett, but we can't control public property, the administrator replied. Eleanor made a decision. I'm moving into the Greenfield Hotel. The girls can stay with me there when they're not visiting David. It's more secure than my home, which the press already knows about. That's very generous, Tasha began. It's what grandmothers do, Eleanor interrupted. Or so I'm told. I'm rather new at this. The next morning, Tasha woke to find Eleanor already in David's room, awkwardly attempting to help Lily with a drawing. No, the sun goes in the corner, Lily was explaining patiently. I see. And these purple circles? Those are Daddy's Get Better balloons, Lily said seriously. As Tasha watched them, Rose and Violet arrived with Jenny. Violet ran straight to Eleanor, holding out a book. Will you read to me, Grandma? She asked. Eleanor froze, clearly startled by the title. She looked at Tasha, who nodded encouragingly. Of course, Eleanor said, her voice softer than Tasha had ever heard it. Come sit with me, Violet. As Eleanor read the storybook, Robert arrived with news. Bennett Technologies' stock is stable, he reported quietly to Tasha, and the board has voted to keep Amanda from gaining any control, regardless of her divorce proceedings. That's wonderful, Tasha replied. David would be so relieved. He'd be proud of you, Robert said. The way you've handled everything, especially the children. Their conversation was interrupted by a small sound from the bed. Lily, who had been reading her own book to her unconscious father, suddenly gasped. Mommy! Daddy squeezed my hand, she exclaimed. The room went still. Then Lily spoke again, her voice rising with excitement. He did it again! Daddy can hear me! The doctor confirmed what Lily had felt. David was indeed responding to stimuli for the first time. Though still unconscious, he was beginning to emerge from his coma. As Tasha called the doctor, Lily continued reading to her father, her small hand held firmly in his. Eleanor watched, tears in her usually stern eyes. He's coming back to us, she whispered. 2 weeks passed since David had first squeezed Lily's hand. Each day brought small improvements. First, his eyes opened. Then came small movements of his fingers and toes. By the third day, he could nod yes or no. After 1 week, he spoke his first word since the accident. Lily. Today, David sat up in his hospital bed, his right arm in a cast, bandages still wrapped around his head. A physical therapist guided him through simple exercises. Lift your left arm again, Mr. Bennett, the therapist instructed. Good. Now try to touch your nose. David's movements were jerky, but he completed the task with determination. Excellent progress, the therapist said. After she left, Tasha entered with a tray of food. The doctor says you're doing great. My body is healing, David said slowly. The words came with difficulty, his brain injury affecting his speech. But my memory still has holes. This was the hardest part of his recovery. He remembered Tasha and their past relationship clearly. He recognized his mother and Robert. He knew the triplets were his daughters, but recent events remained fragmented, especially the accident itself. Lily says, I protected her, David managed, in the car. But I don't remember. Tasha sat beside his bed. You did. The truck was about to hit her side of the car, and you threw yourself over her. The doctors said your body absorbed most of the impact. Good, David nodded. Would do it again. The door opened, and Robert entered carrying a laptop. Sorry to interrupt, Robert said, but Amanda's gone public again. He turned the laptop so they could see a television interview. Amanda sat in a sunlit room wearing a modest blue dress, looking perfectly composed except for the carefully staged tears in her eyes. I just want what's fair, she said to the interviewer. I supported David throughout his career. Now, this woman has manipulated him into acknowledging these children for financial gain. That's not true, Tasha exclaimed. We know, Robert assured her, but she's hired a top publicity team. They're shaping public opinion while David recovers. David's face hardened with determination. He pointed to the laptop. Show me company files. Despite his injuries, David's business mind remained sharp. For the next hour, he and Robert worked through documents, preparing a strategy to counter Amanda's legal maneuvers. Your mother's handling the press conference this afternoon, Robert informed David. Press conference? Tasha asked, concerned. Eleanor thought it was time to present our side, Robert explained. She's going to release evidence of Amanda's embezzlement and behavior toward staff. Later that day, Tasha received a call from her workplace. She stepped into the hallway to answer. Ms. Wilson, this is Dr. Sharma from Lakeside Medical, said her boss. I'm sorry, but we need to terminate your employment. But why? Tasha asked, though she suspected the answer. The publicity surrounding your situation is disrupting our practice. Patients are uncomfortable, and reporters keep calling. Tasha hung up, fighting back tears. She had worked at the medical office for less than a month. Now she was unemployed again. When she returned to David's room, she found Eleanor watching a television mounted on the wall. Eleanor's press conference was being broadcast live. Amanda Bennett deliberately created a hostile work environment for many employees, Eleanor was saying, standing tall behind a podium covered with microphones. We have documented evidence of verbal abuse, wrongful terminations, and most seriously, financial fraud. Eleanor held up a folder. This contains proof that Amanda Bennett diverted company funds to personal accounts. It also includes evidence that she intercepted communications between David and Ms. Wilson 5 years ago, deliberately preventing him from learning about his daughters. Wow, Tasha breathed, watching Eleanor expertly handle reporters' questions. Mother is formidable, David said with pride. That evening, Eleanor returned to the hospital, looking pleased with herself. The public narrative is shifting, she reported. Amanda's lawyer has already called 3 times. Their celebration was cut short when Jenny rushed into the room with Violet in her arms. She's burning up with fever, Jenny explained frantically. She can barely breathe. Tasha touched Violet's forehead. She's so hot, and her breathing is wheezy. David hit the call button repeatedly. Within minutes, doctors had taken Violet to the pediatric ward for examination. 2 hours later, a pediatrician confirmed Tasha's fears. It's pneumonia. Violet's previous respiratory issues have made her more vulnerable. Will she be okay? Tasha asked, her voice shaking. We're starting her on antibiotics immediately, the doctor assured her. She'll need to stay in the hospital for monitoring. David struggled to sit up straighter. Give her best care. Every specialist. Money is no object. David, I can't let you pay for everything, Tasha protested. She's my daughter, David insisted, his speech becoming clearer with emotion. Let me help her. Tasha relented, too worried about Violet to argue further. For the next 3 days, Violet stayed in the pediatric ward while David continued his recovery on a different floor. Tasha split her time between them, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs and barely eating. On the 4th night, David convinced his doctors to let him visit Violet in a wheelchair. When he arrived at her room, he found Tasha asleep in a chair beside the little girl's bed. Daddy? Violet whispered, her voice weak but her eyes brightening. "Hi, sweetheart," David said, wheeling closer. "How do you feel?" "My chest hurts," she admitted. "But the nice doctor says I'm getting better." Tasha stirred and woke, surprised to see David. "You shouldn't be out of bed." "Needed to see my daughter," he replied simply. They sat together beside Violet's bed until she fell asleep again. In the quiet hospital room with moonlight filtering through the blinds, David and Tasha talked honestly for the first time since the accident. "I never thanked you," Tasha said softly. "For what?" "For saving Lily, for protecting her without even thinking about your own safety." David shook his head slowly. "No need for thanks. Any father would do the same." "Not any father," Tasha disagreed. "A good father. The kind I always hoped my girls would have." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Violet sleep peacefully. "I remember when we first met," David said suddenly. "You were different from other women I knew. You asked about my mother's art collection, not my money." Tasha smiled at the memory. "I was intimidated by you, but not because you were wealthy. You were so confident, so sure of everything." "Not everything," David admitted. "I didn't know what I was missing until I saw the girls in the rain that night." The next morning, Eleanor arrived with Rose and Lily to visit Violet. She brought coloring books, stuffed animals, and a basket of fruit. "The pediatrician says she's responding well to treatment," Eleanor reported. "I took the liberty of consulting with the top pulmonary specialist in New York. He'll be here tomorrow." "Thank you," Tasha said sincerely. Eleanor nodded, then turned to Rose and Lily. "Girls, should we show your mother what we've been learning?" "We played store," Rose announced excitedly. "Grandma taught us about money and customers." "Customers have to be satisfied or they won't come back," Lily added seriously. Eleanor looked slightly embarrassed. "I thought some basic business principles wouldn't hurt them." Tasha laughed. They certainly seemed to have enjoyed the lesson. Later that day, David returned to his own room for physical therapy. The therapist had him practice writing his name, a simple task made difficult by his injuries. After several attempts, he managed a shaky but legible signature. "Good progress, Mr. Bennett," the therapist encouraged him. "Soon you'll be signing important documents again." As if on cue, James Parker from Bennett Legal Associates arrived with a portfolio of papers. "These are ready for your review, Mr. Bennett," James said. "Legal recognition of paternity for all 3 girls, trust fund establishments, and the counter-divorce proceedings against Mrs. Bennett, citing moral turpitude and financial misconduct." David examined the documents carefully. "These will protect my daughters? Their future?" "Completely," James confirmed. "Once signed, your children will be legally recognized as Bennetts with all associated rights and protections. The trusts ensure their financial security regardless of what happens with the divorce proceedings." David picked up his pen with determination. His hand trembled slightly as he signed each document, but his resolve was unwavering. That evening, David sat in Violet's hospital room reading her a bedtime story. Though his speech was still halting, he practiced diligently with each word. "The princess found her courage and saved the kingdom," he read. "Like you saved Lily," Violet said sleepily. David gently touched her cheek. "I'm just glad. You're getting better. Soon we'll all go home." "Where's home?" Violet asked innocently. The question hung in the air. David looked at Tasha, who had entered with cups of coffee for them both. "We'll figure that out," Tasha promised, handing David his cup. Their fingers touched briefly, a small moment of connection as they faced the uncertain future together. "Where's home?" Violet's innocent question lingered in the air. 6 weeks later, that question had been answered. David stood on the front porch of a white colonial house on Maple Street in Greenwich, leaning lightly on his cane. His injuries were healing well, though the doctors said he might always walk with a slight limp. "What do you think?" he asked Tasha, who stood beside him. "It's beautiful," she admitted. looking at the 5-bedroom house with its red door and black shutters. The large backyard featured a wooden playground set and tall maple trees that provided shade. And most importantly, it's in the best school district in Greenwich, David added, his speech much clearer now after weeks of therapy. Rose ran ahead, pulling Lily and Violet by their hands. "Come on, let's see our rooms." David had purchased the house last week after his doctors finally cleared him to leave the hospital. It was comfortable but not ostentatious, nothing like the mansion he had shared with Amanda. "Let me show you something," David said, guiding Tasha around the side of the house to a separate structure. "This is the guest house. It has its own kitchen, living room, and bedroom." "Perfect," Tasha nodded. "This will work well for me." David frowned slightly. "You don't have to stay out here. There's plenty of room in the main house." "I think this is better," Tasha insisted. "The girls need stability and clear boundaries. This arrangement gives us both our space while keeping us close for the children." Inside the main house, the triplets were already exploring. Violet's health had improved dramatically since her hospital stay. The specialist Eleanor had consulted had prescribed a new treatment plan that was working wonders. "Can I have the blue room?" Rose called from upstairs. "I want the one with the window seat," Lily added, her voice stronger and more confident than it had been before the accident. "You three decide together," Tasha called back. "Remember to share and take turns." David smiled as he watched her. "You're a wonderful mother." "I've had lots of practice," she replied. "It hasn't been easy, but they're worth every struggle." His phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. "That's the reminder for Violet's celebration party this afternoon. The pediatric staff wanted to have a little ceremony for her recovery." "The girls are so excited," Tasha said. "They've been making thank you cards for all the doctors and nurses." Later that afternoon, they gathered in the pediatric ward's playroom. Colorful balloons and a "Get Well" banner decorated the space. Violet wore a paper crown the nurses had made for her, declaring her recovery princess. David chatted with doctors while Eleanor helped Rose and Lily arrange their homemade cards on a table. Tasha stood back, watching her family with contentment. Jenny had returned to Oregon last week, satisfied that her sister and nieces were in good hands. David's phone rang again. He glanced at it with a frown. "It's the security system at the house." Something triggered the alarm. He opened the app on his phone to check the security cameras. His face darkened as he showed the screen to Tasha. "It's Amanda," he said quietly. "She's inside our house." The video showed Amanda moving through the living room, picking up and throwing framed photos of the triplets. "How did she get in?" Tasha gasped. "She must still have a copy of my old house key. The locksmith said the new locks would be installed tomorrow." David turned to Robert, who had come to support Violet's celebration. "Can you stay with the girls? We need to go home." "Of course," Robert agreed immediately. "I'll take them to my house if necessary." "I'm coming too," Eleanor insisted when David explained the situation. They hurried to David's car, leaving Robert to explain to the triplets that they needed to handle something at the house. The drive back to Maple Street was tense. "I'll call the police," Tasha said, reaching for her phone. "Wait," David cautioned. "Let's assess the situation first. Amanda is unstable, but she's not physically dangerous." When they arrived, they found the front door open. They entered cautiously to find Amanda in the upstairs hallway, tearing children's drawings from the walls. "Amanda," David said firmly, "you need to leave." She whirled around, her perfect blonde hair wild, her eyes blazing. "This should have been our home. Our children would have lived here." "This is breaking and entering," Eleanor said coldly. "You're trespassing." Amanda laughed, a brittle sound. "Trespassing? I'm David's wife. These are our properties." "Not anymore," David replied. "The divorce will be finalized soon, and the court has already issued a restraining order against you." Amanda moved to the triplets' bedroom and began pulling clothes from the closet. "I saw the pictures in the papers. Your little family celebration at the hospital. Did you forget I exist? That I'm the one who stood by you while you built your precious company? Amanda, please stop, Tasha said. The girls will be upset if they see their things destroyed. Oh, the precious little girls, Amanda sneered. Do you know what I have, David? She pulled papers from her designer purse, company documents, trade secrets, things that would interest your competitors very much. David calmly took out his phone and began recording. Are you threatening to release confidential company information? I deserve half of everything, Amanda insisted. Half the company, half the money, half the properties. If I don't get it, I'll make sure you lose it all. As she ranted, David continued recording, capturing her threats and admission of having stolen company documents. Those documents in your hand prove you committed corporate espionage, Eleanor pointed out. That's a serious crime. Amanda's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? All of you against me. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the desk in the girls' room. I won't let you take what's mine. She lunged toward Tasha, scissors raised. Without hesitation, Eleanor stepped between them. Amanda's wild swing caught Eleanor's arm, leaving a small cut. That's enough, David shouted, grabbing Amanda's wrist. The scissors clattered to the floor. Tasha had already dialed emergency services. Please send police to 24 Maple Street, she said into the phone. A woman has broken in and assaulted someone. The police arrived minutes later. They found Amanda still screaming threats as David and Eleanor explained what had happened. The officers handcuffed Amanda and led her to their patrol car. You'll regret this, Amanda shrieked as they took her away. I'll destroy all of you. After giving statements to the police, the three adults began cleaning up the mess Amanda had left behind. David found the triplets' drawings torn and scattered across the floor in Lily's room. She destroyed their artwork, he said, his voice breaking as he gathered the pieces. Rose's family portrait, Violet's flowers, Lily's drawing of all of us together. Tasha knelt beside him, helping to collect the fragments. We can't replace these, but the girls will make new ones. Better ones. David looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. I'm so sorry for all of this. For Amanda, for the accident, for everything you've gone through because of me. Because of you, the girls have their father. Tasha corrected him. They have a home, security, a future. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, a bandage now covering the cut on her arm. The security company is here to change the locks immediately. David nodded, then asked the question that had been weighing on him. How do we explain this to the girls? We tell them the truth, Tasha said, in a way they can understand. That Mrs. Bennet was very angry and made bad choices, but she can't hurt us anymore. Robert called to say he was bringing the triplets home. The family worked quickly to restore order to the house before they arrived. When the girls ran through the front door, Rose immediately noticed something was different. She looked around suspiciously. Someone was in our house. Yes, David confirmed, kneeling to her level despite the pain in his leg. Mrs. Bennet came here when we weren't home. She was very angry and broke some things. Did she break my drawings? Lily asked, seeing a torn piece of paper David had missed. Yes, sweetheart, she did. But the police took her away, and she won't come back. Rose's face was serious. I need to check every room to make sure the mean lady is gone. She marched upstairs, opening doors and looking under beds. When she was satisfied the house was safe, the family gathered in the kitchen. Robert and his wife Maria had brought dinner, and Eleanor set the table with the new dishes David had purchased. I think we need a fresh start, David said, looking around at all of them. Tasha, the triplets, Eleanor, Robert, and Maria. This house may be a little damaged right now, but we're still standing. We're still a family. To new beginnings, Robert raised his glass of water in a toast. Later that night, after the triplets were asleep and Robert and Maria had gone home, David received a call from his lawyer. Amanda has agreed to a settlement, James Parker informed him. After her arrest today, She's willing to accept a much smaller payout in exchange for complete confidentiality and no further contact with you or the children." "Is it over?" David asked, hardly daring to believe it. "The paperwork will take time, but essentially yes. She won't bother you again." David hung up and shared the news with Tasha and Eleanor, who were having tea in the living room. "Thank goodness," Eleanor sighed with relief. "Now you can focus on what matters." Tasha looked toward the stairs where the triplets slept peacefully in their new rooms. Yes, what really matters. 1 month had passed since Amanda's arrest and settlement agreement. True to her word, she had disappeared from their lives. The house on Maple Street was now truly their home, repaired and redecorated to erase the damage she had caused. David stood in the kitchen on a sunny morning, making breakfast for the triplets. His cooking skills were still developing, but he had mastered the art of Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes. "Daddy, mine needs more chocolate chips," Rose instructed, watching critically from her seat at the island. "More chocolate chips coming right up," David said, adding 3 more to the batter. His leg still ached on rainy days, but he moved much more easily now without his cane. Lily entered the kitchen, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. "Mommy says she needs help with the new curtains in the living room." David looked up in surprise. Tasha had been spending more time in the main house recently, though she still slept in the guest quarters. "Tell her I'll be right there after breakfast duty." In the living room, Tasha stood on a stepladder, struggling with a curtain rod. "This is harder than it looked in the store," she admitted when David appeared. He took the rod from her hands. "Let me help. You shouldn't be climbing ladders." "I'm perfectly capable," she said, "but step down anyway." "I know you are," David replied. "You're capable of everything. That doesn't mean you have to do it alone anymore." Together, they hung the new curtains, blue with a subtle pattern that brightened the room. Tasha stepped back to admire their work. "It's starting to feel like a real home," she said. "It is a real home," David assured her. "Our home." Later that morning, Tasha opened her laptop at the kitchen table. David noticed her scrolling through a website with interest. "What are you looking at?" he asked, refilling her coffee cup. "Greenwich Community College. They have an evening nursing program." She looked up hesitantly. "Eleanor suggested I finish my degree." "That's a wonderful idea," David said. "You'd be an amazing nurse. It would mean classes 3 evenings a week. I'd need help with the girls." "Of course," David said immediately. "I can adjust my schedule. They're my daughters too." "Are you sure? Running a company isn't exactly a part-time job." "I've been reconsidering how Bennett Technologies operates," David admitted. "Robert has been handling more of the day-to-day operations since my accident. It's working well." The following week, Tasha enrolled in nursing classes. On her first evening of school, David found himself alone with all 3 girls for dinner. "Where are the plates?" he asked, opening several kitchen cabinets. "In the dishwasher, silly," Rose informed him. "Mommy always runs it after lunch." David opened the dishwasher to find clean dishes. "Right, let's set the table." Dinner was chaotic. David burned the pasta, Violet spilled her juice, and Lily refused to eat anything but bread. By the time Tasha returned home at 9:30, the kitchen looked like a disaster zone. "What happened here?" she asked, trying not to laugh. David looked exhausted. "Parenting is harder than running a multi-billion-dollar company. You'll get better with practice," Tasha encouraged him. "Did everyone finish their homework?" David's eyes widened in panic. "Homework? I didn't know there was homework." The next day at Bennett Technologies, David called a company-wide meeting. Standing at the podium in the main conference room, he addressed his employees. "For years, this company has demanded total commitment, often at the expense of personal lives," he began. "Today, I'm announcing changes to our policies." The employees looked at each other in surprise as David outlined new family-friendly initiatives: on-site childcare, generous parental leave, flexible scheduling, and remote work options. "I've learned recently that success isn't just measured by profit margins," he concluded. It's measured by the lives we build, the families we nurture. Robert approached him after the meeting. Those are significant changes. Necessary ones, David replied. I can't expect my employees to sacrifice what I'm no longer willing to sacrifice myself. At home, David and Tasha established a co-parenting calendar on the refrigerator. Color-coded magnets showed who would handle school drop-offs, doctor appointments, and bedtime routines. You've assigned yourself to every school event, Tasha noted. I've missed too much already, David said. I don't want to miss any more. One morning, Eleanor visited with a stack of papers. She sat at the kitchen table with Tasha while David played with the girls in the backyard. These are the trust fund documents, Eleanor explained. David has established one for each girl. Tasha looked through them with a frown. This is very generous, but I'm concerned about them growing up with too much privilege. Eleanor nodded. I raised that same concern. That's why David included these conditions. She pointed to a clause in the document. They can't access most of the money until they're 25, and only after completing college or vocational training. There are provisions for purchasing homes, starting businesses, or continuing education. I want them to understand the value of work, Tasha said. As does David, Eleanor agreed. That's why he's insisted they have regular chores and responsibilities even at this young age. True to his word, David attended every school event over the next few weeks. He sat through parent-teacher conferences, volunteered at the class Valentine's Day party, and even agreed to coach Violet's soccer team, despite knowing nothing about the sport. Why did I say yes to coaching? He asked Tasha one evening studying a soccer rulebook. Because Violet looked at you with those big blue eyes, Tasha laughed. You're a pushover for your daughters. I'm learning, he admitted. But old habits were difficult to break. One Wednesday afternoon, David sat in his home office on a video call with Robert when his phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Violet's presentation, 2 o'clock. He glanced at the clock. It was already 1:45. Robert, I need to go. Violet has a presentation at school. David, this board meeting has been scheduled for weeks, Robert reminded him. The investors are already joining the call. David hesitated, torn between responsibilities. How long will it take? At least an hour, maybe more if they have questions about the new expansion. David made a decision he would soon regret. Tell Violet I'll try to make it for the end. The board meeting dragged on. Complicated questions about the European expansion required detailed answers. By the time David ended the call and rushed to his car, it was already 3:15. Violet's presentation would be over. He arrived at the elementary school as children streamed out to waiting parents. He spotted Violet walking beside her teacher, holding a large poster board. Her face lit up when she saw him, then fell when she realized he had missed her moment. "Daddy! You came!" she said, running to him. "I'm so sorry I'm late," he said, kneeling to hug her. The meeting took longer than I expected. "It's okay," Violet said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I did really good. My teacher said so." "Can I see your project?" David asked. Violet proudly showed him her poster about butterflies. "I remembered all my words without stuttering," she told him. "I'm so proud of you," David said, his chest tight with regret. That night, after the girls were asleep, David found Violet's project notes on the kitchen table. She had practiced her presentation for weeks, overcoming her stutter to speak in front of her class, and he had missed it for a meeting that could have been rescheduled. The next morning, he called Robert. "I'm making changes to my schedule. Family events are non-negotiable from now on. Board meetings work around them, not the other way around." "Understood," Robert replied. "For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice." That evening, David apologized to Violet properly, giving her his full attention as she delivered her entire butterfly presentation just for him. When she finished, he applauded enthusiastically. "That was amazing! You didn't stutter once." Violet beamed. "I practiced a lot. I promise I won't miss the next one," David said. Nothing at work is more important than you girls." Later, after the triplets were in bed, David sat in his study reviewing reports. The clock showed 10:30 when Tasha knocked on the open door. "You're working late," she observed, holding 2 cups of tea. "Just finishing these quarterly projections," he said, accepting the tea gratefully. "Would you like to have dinner with us tomorrow night?" Tasha asked. "In the main house, I mean." Not just grabbing something quickly before going back to work. David looked up, surprised by the invitation. "I'd like that very much." "Good," Tasha smiled. "The girls miss seeing you at dinner." "So do I." As she left, David closed his laptop. The reports could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, something more important had happened. Another small step toward becoming the family they were meant to be. The dinner invitation marked a turning point. Over the next months, Tasha spent more time in the main house. First, she joined them for meals. Then she began staying to watch movies with the family. Eventually, she started working at the kitchen table instead of in the guest house. The walls between their separate lives gradually came down. 1 year had passed since that stormy October night when David first recognized his daughters beneath the oak tree. Today, the same massive oak was decorated with pink and purple streamers, fairy lights, and a banner reading, "Happy 5th Birthday." "Is the cake ready?" David called from the backyard, where he was setting up tables and chairs. "Almost," Tasha replied from the kitchen. She put the finishing touches on a 3-tiered birthday cake, each tier a different flavor to satisfy each triplet's preference. Eleanor entered carrying a stack of beautifully wrapped presents. "I might have gone overboard with the gifts," she admitted. "Might have?" Tasha laughed, eyeing the towering pile. "They're my only grandchildren," Eleanor said defensively. "Besides, most of these are educational." The back door burst open as Lily ran in, her curly hair longer now and tied with ribbons. "Mommy!" Rose pushed the button on the sprinklers and everyone's getting wet. Tasha and Eleanor rushed outside to find Rose laughing as guests scattered from the suddenly active sprinkler system. David was already at the control panel, shutting it off. "Rose Bennett," Tasha said sternly, "we talked about not touching things that aren't yours." "Sorry, Mommy," Rose replied, not looking particularly sorry. "I wanted to see what would happen." "Now you know," David said, trying not to smile at his daughter's mischievous spirit. "Why don't you help dry off the chairs instead of experimenting with more buttons?" The yard quickly returned to order. Friends from preschool arrived with their parents. Robert and Maria came with their son Kevin, who had become the triplets' frequent playmate. Even Jenny had flown in from Oregon for the occasion. David watched as Violet, no longer plagued by respiratory problems, ran happily with her friends. Rose organized a game of tag, naturally taking charge as always. Lily, once so shy and frightened, now confidently showed her friends the new playhouse David had built. "They've changed so much in a year," Robert commented, standing beside David. "We all have," David replied. Indeed, David hardly resembled the distant workaholic he had once been. His hair was slightly longer, his face more relaxed. He coached Violet's soccer team every Saturday morning. He never missed a school event. He had even learned to make perfect Mickey Mouse pancakes. Tasha had transformed too. Now in her second semester of nursing school, she carried herself with newfound confidence. She had made friends with other parents, joined the PTA, and recently started volunteering at a clinic for low-income families. Eleanor, perhaps, had changed the most dramatically. The once intimidating businesswoman now sat on a blanket with several children, teaching them to play a counting game using acorns from the oak tree. "Time for cake," Tasha announced. The children gathered around the picnic table as David helped Tasha bring out the impressive cake with 5 candles on top. "Make a wish," David told his daughters as they prepared to blow out the candles together. After cake and presents, while the children played on the new swing set, David approached the group of adults. "I'd like to make an announcement," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. The adults quieted and even the children paused their games. 1 year ago today, I met 3 little girls who changed my life forever, David began. I was a different person then, focused on business, on success, on everything except what truly matters. The guests listened attentively. Several of David's top executives were present, having become genuine friends rather than just business associates. Today I want to announce some changes, David continued. First, I'm officially stepping back from daily operations at Bennett Technologies. Robert Chen will be taking over as CEO with my full support and confidence. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Robert looked surprised, though they had discussed this possibility. Second, David went on, I'm establishing the Bennett Family Foundation. This non-profit organization will support single parents and their children with housing, education, and health care. Tasha looked at him with surprise and pride. They had talked about charitable work, but he hadn't mentioned starting a foundation. And finally, David said, his voice softening, I have one more announcement. He walked to where Tasha stood and took her hand. This past year has taught me what truly matters in life. It's not business success or money or power. It's the people we love and who love us in return. David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The gathered guests grew quiet. The triplets stopped playing and moved closer, eyes wide with curiosity. Tasha Wilson, David said, kneeling before her despite the twinge in his leg, you are the strongest, most loving person I have ever known. You raised our beautiful daughters on your own for 4 years, and you've taught me how to be not just a father, but a better human being. Tasha's eyes filled with tears as David opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. I'm not asking you to marry me because you need rescuing or because of the girls, he continued. I'm asking because I love you. Because I want to build a future together as equal partners, sharing our joys and challenges. Will you marry me? Tasha looked at David, at their daughters watching with excited expressions, at the gathering of friends and family who had supported them through their difficult journey. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I will. Cheers erupted around them. Rose jumped up and down excitedly, Violet clapped her hands, and Lily ran to hug both her parents. Are we going to be a real family now? Rose asked loudly. We already are a real family, David told her, standing and lifting her into his arms. This just makes it official. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the triplets were exhausted from excitement, David and Tasha sat together beneath the oak tree. The fairy lights twinkled overhead, casting a gentle glow on the yard. Did you plan that proposal all along? Tasha asked, admiring her ring. Not exactly, David admitted. I've had the ring for weeks, but I was waiting for the right moment. Then today, seeing everyone together, seeing how far we've all come in a year, it felt right. It was perfect, Tasha assured him. The foundation idea is still new, David said, but I want to do something meaningful with my resources. Something that might have helped you when you were struggling alone with 3 babies. I think it's a wonderful idea, Tasha said, and I'd like to be involved, maybe after I finish my nursing degree. Partners in everything, David agreed, taking her hand. From the house they heard Violet calling out, Mommy! Daddy! Lily won't share her new doll! Duty calls, Tasha smiled, standing and pulling David to his feet. As they walked toward the house hand in hand, Eleanor appeared on the back porch with the camera she'd been using all day. Wait, she called. Let me get one more picture of you both. David and Tasha paused beneath the oak tree, arms around each other. Now a family picture, Eleanor insisted. Girls, come here for a moment. The triplets ran out in their pajamas, giggling as they positioned themselves in front of their parents. Eleanor set the camera timer and hurried to join them. Everyone smile, she instructed. The camera flashed, capturing the moment. David with his arm around Tasha, Eleanor beside them, and the triplets in front, their matching blue eyes and dimpled smiles shining brightly. They weren't perfect. They still had challenges ahead. but they were exactly where they were meant to be, together. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, David found Tasha on the back porch, looking at the oak tree now quietly standing in the moonlight. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How much has changed since that stormy night?" she replied. "I was so scared then, so desperate. Oh, I had no idea what would happen next." "Are you still scared?" David asked. Tasha thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. We've weathered the worst storms already. Together." David kissed her gently. "Together," he agreed. "That's how we'll face everything from now on." In the quiet house on Maple Street, beneath the branches of the old oak tree that had witnessed their beginning, the Bennett family rested peacefully, their future bright with promise and love. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.